talk about moving forward into 21-22. Kim, are those all the big topics? There's a lot to cover there. Did I miss anything? Did I lose you, Kim?
Nope. That's I was giving you the thumbs up. Maybe you can't see me.
Okay.
But no, I think that really covers the scope of what we want to touch on, and then obviously allow a lot of time for questions.
Yeah, so we're gonna really go through this rather quickly. But as I mentioned, you know, rebuilding an educational system in 1 day, 1 month, and 6 months, we've literally had to reimagine our schools 3 times since last March. And I will tell you, from a professional perspective, it's been the most challenging experience that I've ever encountered as an educator in my 20 years in the business. You know, moving online without having an infrastructure back in March was a great challenge. But I will tell you, the amount of work that went into this summer and really thinking about how we deliver instructional programming when we recognized what the scientists were saying about potential for surge and spike, and knowing that we had to be agile and fluid and have the ability to move from in-person to fully remote was probably where we spent the lion's share of our intellectual energy over the last 6 months. And we literally built an entire online program where 1,800 students signed up from day one, as that being the primary delivery of instruction. But since, as many of you know, since we've had to move to fully remote. So now every student in the Huron Valley schools is engaged in remote learning, and that mirrors the virtual academy that we built over the course of the summer. And there are 3 main factors that we've really that have been at the forefront, sort of our guiding principles as we've deliberated and debated the best way with which to approach the work. And the first is, you know, the safety and health of our students and all of our staff. And you know, what I would say is of note is with this model of being able to move in and out, we recognize that these 3 pillars, something always has to give, because you can't have all 3 in the middle of a pandemic. So health and safety is a major pillar. The social emotional well-being of our students, a major pillar. And then the third pillar is the instructional integrity of our programming. And so when we started the school year, what we have found is very little disruption to the instructional integrity when it comes to the virtual academy, because students have access to their teachers, you know, 4 days a week minimally. And there's very little disruption in terms of the continuity of the delivery of instruction when you have access to your teacher. Now, there isn't the same level of social interaction, so there's the give. There's an incredible amount of safety and health because there's less exposure to transmission, virus, and all the factors that we continue to hear from our health department are challenging. So we're just constantly trying to weigh the pros and the cons and look at the data points to help us make decisions as an organization. So you know, as I started, you know, 1 day we had to remake, you know, 1 month we had to remake what the system looked like, and then most recently spending the last 6 months and really envisioning what the hybrid model, the 4 days of face-to-face looks like, and the remote. So moving on to the next topic, and all of these really go hand in glove. So you might hear some overlap, but it's what I like to call the polarity in politics. School districts are apolitical. We don't ascribe to a political party. We are completely apolitical and work with our health department and the decision-making process. However, that being said, there's been an incredible amount of polarity amongst and between various stakeholder groups. And that has absolutely had an impact, and we've seen it play out in the schools. I'd like to believe that the kids are largely removed from that, but it absolutely has had an impact from mask wearing to what constitutes safe, to frankly, the polar opposite ends of the extreme. On any given day, I can get an email saying that, what are you doing? This virus is not real. Get kids back in school. I don't know what you're thinking, Superintendent, all the way to under no circumstances should we have our kids in school. The virus is spreading exponentially. It's out of control. So I just want, the chamber to hear and know and understand that we are not untouched by those political factors that continue to push upon the school district. So when we make decisions, we need to really take all of those factors and put them to the side and listen to and heed the counsel of the health department and use the data points that help us drive our decision making and really look at our operational structure. The reality is, if we have a COVID case and that impacts 30 people who now have to quarantine, operationally, businesses cannot run without staff. We can't run schools with 15%, 20% of our staff in quarantine and 15 and 20 and 30% of our student population in quarantine, because it creates incredible discontinuity in the instructional delivery. So that's the second bullet point I really just want to touch on briefly, because it absolutely has an impact on the school district. Extraordinary financial challenges. We projected last year, our budget is completely tied to two factors. One is enrollment, and two is what the state allocates to school districts on an annual basis. At the end of last year, we were being told that we could potentially see a $12.5 million cut to our school operational structure. That would have put the school district about 10% in deficit. Now, that was a worst case scenario. It didn't actually end up being that devastating, but we still continue to operate with incredible uncertainty. And fortunately, there was CARES Act money. Fortunately, we received some additional CARES Act support from Oakland County and the leaders there, which were just tremendously helpful to the school district as we continue to ride out the financial uncertainty. But just to give you some context, we've spent about $800,000 just so far to date, and we're not even quite halfway through the school year. So $800,000 just in PPE. That would include masks, desk partitions, wipes, hand sanitizer. That includes a atomizing cleaning solution that we call Sniper, which we use to disinfect our classrooms and our buses every single day. That includes also, actually beyond that, we also hired permanent subs because we have staffing challenges. We're having incredible difficulty hiring staff, not only substitute teachers, but paraprofessionals, as bus drivers, and any other area that you can imagine. And I know that is a common challenge that's shared by all of our business representatives on this call, as well as I've mentioned, I've heard, in our board chamber meetings, that's often a point of conversation, how difficult it is to find staff to get through these extraordinary times. And so the last piece I want to touch on quickly, because I oftentimes get this question, is around how the school district makes decisions. And I just want to be really clear here. There's no clear metric. I'd like to say that there's a clear number or a clear percentage rate of positivity that we've been given by the state or the health department that helps us make decisions. But frankly, we've really had to design our own metrics to help us make the best possible decisions. And the way we've done that is by, one, establishing a baseline, and then two, using a practice or a term that I like to call triangulating data, which means we look at multiple data points, and what we're looking for in these multiple data points is for a similar story to be told. Because if a similar story is told from different sets of data, then that gives us confidence that the data we're looking at has credibility. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to run through these slides very quickly, but I just want to give you a sense. So on October 19th, our Board of Education took action to increase face-to-face instruction from 2 days a week to 4 days a week. And we had every intention of doing that on November 9th. But a lot transpired from October 19th to November 9th and to where we are today. And so I'm just going to give you a sense of what that looks like. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Hang on just a moment. Okay, can everybody see that? I can't see you for the moment. So if somebody could just say yes.
We can see it, Paul.
Okay, fabulous. So what you're going to see here is 4 data points: the Harvard Global Health Institute, the Johns Hopkins, the Michigan, or I'm sorry, 5 data points: Michigan's data, and then the most important data points are our own local data. And so I'm going to run through this very quickly. So here's October 19th. I'm sorry, I'm having technical issues. There we go. Here's October 19th. According to the Harvard Global Health Institute, red is the most troubling. Oakland County was at a yellow, which gave us a high degree of confidence that the community really had spread under control. And here's what we look like as a state and as a county on November 30th. You'll see we're in a red, and we're in a red today. Johns Hopkins, I want you to pay attention to the red box. We're at 3.6% positivity. 5% positivity is what we're told by the experts is where you need to start paying attention and getting concerned. And so here's where we were. Here's where we are on November 30th. We're at 12% positivity, according to Johns Hopkins in the state. So you'll see, exponential growth in terms of the number of cases, and the deaths have followed as well. Here's what we looked like on October 19th. And again, that date of October 19th is important because that's when our board took action to move to 4 days a week of face-to-face instruction. We had 1,791 cases, 23 deaths. On 11/30, we had 8,103 deaths. So you see, again, exponential growth. And the most important data is this data point right here. Here's where we were as a Huron Valley. You'll notice we're a very light shade of blue there. We had 29 cases for a population of 57,400 people across all of our communities. That's a case rate of 5.1 per 10,000 in the red box. And then just look at where we are on November 30th. Obviously, it's hitting us right in our communities. 536 cases, 93.4 cases per 10,000. So these are the data points that we look at. We also look at our own data. These are data points in our own building. On October 19th, we only had 3 positive cases from the beginning of the school year and 5 total quarantines. And here's where we were as of late last week. Now, what's important to note here is we've seen a drop off actually in the reporting since we've been in the remote setting. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Rutt to speak to the next several data points. Kim.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, and thanks everyone. Thanks, Jen, for inviting us to do this. Thanks to everyone on the call. I know that, as business leaders, we recognize in the school district that this is, hitting our businesses in an incredible way. And the information that we're sharing with you today is in no way intended to discount what our business community is going through, because I think it's just monumental. Our goal today really is to talk with you about how we've pivoted really in these times, what we're learning, what we're trying to do differently, and how we're attempting to educate our community's students in a way that makes the most sense for this community based on all the factors in this pandemic. Thanks, Paul, for sharing that data. I think that's important for folks to see and for them to know that these decisions are not arbitrary. We don't take them lightly. We take them very seriously. And we understand how frustrating it is for parents in our community that we're not learning face-to-face. Paul Salah says repeatedly, multiple times a week, you know, the best learning happens face-to-face with teachers in a classroom or in a learning environment with other students. And that's still the case today. But I wanted to just touch on a little bit of what we've done when we are learning in person to assure the safety, so that if you're having conversations out in the community as we look to come back face to face, you'll know that, you know, we were concerned early on about what our level of mask participation would be, both among students and staff. But I have to say, our staff and our students have adapted famously. I was concerned about what this would look like, you know, in the mask debate, you know, wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. And frankly, after the first week or so, we didn't have a lot of challenges with that. You know, students need to be reminded for sure, but we just really have not been seen a lot of pushback on the whole mask piece. We did invest in these desk partitions in the hopes that it was, as with any type of security, what you look at is having layers of security. And so we saw it as another layer of protection for both our students and staff. And so students at the elementary level have them on their desk, and they're stationed on their desks. And then students at the secondary level travel with their desk partitions. We also implemented temperature checks at every building every morning as students either boarded the bus or arrived in person and were dropped off by their families, or arrived in our, you know, with our high school students via their own vehicle. And we'll continue to do those things when we come back face to face, because you know, this is not the time to take away any safety precautions, any level of assurance that we have a healthy population to the greatest extent possible in the buildings. A couple other things that we had to do as a result of counsel from the public health community is we had to establish dedicated quarantine rooms or COVID rooms in each of our buildings, and they had to be staffed with a staff member full time if there was somebody in one of those quarantine rooms. So that's something we'd never had to do before. We worked over the summer to build those rooms out with, you know, cots and partitions and PPE for the people who would be in those rooms with the students or the staff members. We had to learn a whole new system for reporting COVID cases to the county, and then notifying our community in that community population in that particular school when there was a positive case of COVID. And so we've learned so much. You know, if you had asked us a year ago what life would look like in a pandemic, because part of what we do on an annual basis is update our emergency operations procedures, I could tell you that it would only be theoretical at that point, but now we have real practice in place. Part of the silver lining is we now know what to do. We've made the adjustments, and from a safety standpoint, I think we've done a very good job. Paul talked about early on, one of the things that you know, we had was just a very few number of cases, the 3 positive cases well into October. And what we were seeing is some disconnect in the public health community between how transmission was occurring. And I think that was quite accurate, that transmission wasn't necessarily occurring in our schools, but it was occurring outside of the schools and then being brought into our schools. So we were keeping kids and our staff safe in school, but what was happening is those behaviors that were occurring outside of school were impacting us in school. So it wasn't necessarily things happening in the classroom or even on the sports field to a great extent, because our student athletes were being quite safe as well. It was the things that were happening on the weekends, whether they were parties or family gatherings or weddings and funerals and that kind of thing, where the transmission then was coming into the schools. So those were some of the things that we were wrestling with. And Paul mentioned the whole piece of around PPE. That was also including, hygiene supplies, because, we wanted to make sure we had cleaning wipes and hand sanitizer, virtually everywhere in every building. And I would just say that we've also had our staff just step up tremendously. We've had to sort of redo this from the beginning of the school year, including having bus drivers take temperatures in the morning, having, all call in terms of staff to be ready to take student temperatures in the morning, staff members, wiping down desks and high touch areas, and, having lunch in the classroom. Those kinds of things have really just changed sort of every aspect of what we do. And I think I just really want to give props to our staff, who I think have really risen to the occasion, both in the remote setting as well as in the face-to-face setting. And then finally, I'm going to zip through one more topic before we get to the part about what's sort of coming up in 2020 or 2021. So as we look to next phases, I think one of the next things we're going to have to think about is how we approach the information around vaccines. So when vaccines become available on a more broad-based basis, what's that going to look like in terms of our role in communicating facts about the vaccine? And we've tried to, as much as possible, remove ourselves from the political aspects of all kinds of conversations. And now I think our next challenge will be, how do we communicate, and what's the school's role in talking with both students and or families and staff about what the vaccine is or is not, and what our expectations will be. Obviously, we'll follow the public health guidance on that. And we'll do that in a way that makes the most sense. And I would just, before I move to the bond information, I would just say Oakland County has been a very strong partner in all of this. Most noticeably, we had a partnership to have nurses assigned to our school district, one, to help us implement the safety protocols, and two, to do everything from teaching young children about hand washing and how to properly wash hands, to helping us contact trace when we did have positive COVID cases in the school district. So I raced through that pretty quickly. We're going to be wide open to your questions, but before we do, Paul's going to share some additional slides. It's not been all bad in 2020. He mentioned that a year ago, our community stepped up in a huge way and approved a $200 million bond and building site sinking fund, which is going to allow us really to change the face of this school district for a decade and longer. And so some of the immediate projects that we've done were things that we were able to do sort of in a shorter time span, including some of the athletic facilities. So the slides that Paul's going to run through, this is our Milford High School turf, the before picture at MHS, and the after picture, which is absolutely gorgeous. As you can see, this drone shot really makes it pop here. And then the next one is our tennis courts before, and then our tennis courts after. Again, a really huge change. Then also work at our track in Milford, the before picture, and then the after picture. Also, just an incredible impact for our student athletes. and then the discus and the shot put area. And then the Lakeland tennis courts and track and turf before in a drone shot. And then the field, the athletic field after for our Lakeland Eagles, the new turf, and our tennis courts before, and our tennis courts after, which were relocated, our turf or our track before, and a shot of the track after. Obviously, just beautiful facilities. And then Watkins Boulevard, if any of you have traveled down Watkins Boulevard prior to this summer, you know that you had the potential to lose a tire in Watkins Boulevard. And now the before picture is just stunning. And then the after picture of what Watkins looks like now. And I will say, while as nice as this pavement looks right now, and this road looks right now, next summer is going to look even better, as we are going to do some beautification of this boulevard leading up to Heritage Elementary and Milford High School with trees and other landscaping elements. So it's going to be even more spectacular, but at least now you won't lose a tire traveling down that boulevard. And then this is a shot of the fencing and tennis court parking. And then this is Bannerman Drive, which is that drive that leads into Lone Tree, and it runs in front of Milford High School, as well as the equestrian fields and past our transportation facilities. And I don't know, is there more, Paul? I think that might be it. So just real quickly, a couple of the things coming up in 2021. We are going to be doing exterior and interior renovations in 4 of our oldest elementary buildings, including Highland, Johnson, Oxbow, and Lakewood. Those renovations will include new secure entries that are going to just be state of the art. And we're just so fortunate. So those first 4 elementary buildings are going to get a significant facelift. We're also then going to be investing in additional security, including cameras, enhanced burglar alarm systems, video surveillance, and the ability for our technology to really keep pace with current security requirements for schools. So again, I raced through that, but we wanted to cover a lot of territory, just sort of setting things up for you, but still allowing time for Q&A. So Paul, did I miss anything that I said I would cover?
Nope, you got it, Kim. Thank you. Fantastic. So any questions?
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. I just wanted to commend all of you at the schools, all the employees, the board members. This was an impossible situation that you were all put in, and it was a no-win situation that you were put in, that you couldn't possibly make everybody happy. And having children in the school system, I just wanted to just take a moment to say thank you for putting the kids' safety first and doing what's best for them, even if it didn't make you the most popular people all the time. Most of us appreciate it. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I know I think there are several board members on the call too, and I know they would appreciate that as well, because you're absolutely right. It was impossible to make the right decision for everybody, and it remains, frankly, very difficult. Other questions about anything? I mean, throw it at us. Bond, sinking fund, pandemic, snow days. I don't know.
Well, snow days don't exist anymore, right? Because they can just work virtually.
For now, yeah.
I told my kids that as soon as this happened. I'm like, oh, no more snow days for you.
I think at this point, they're okay with no snow days. They want to go to school.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Dr. Salad, any guess of when the kids will be going back?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we continue to have that conversation. The intention with the pause through the end of this week was really to continue monitoring the data. And my hope was that with a 2-week pause after the Thanksgiving holiday, that we would basically self-quarantine and have an opportunity to mitigate some of the travel that occurred over the holidays and mitigate some of the spread. I will tell you that it doesn't look good, frankly. It seems the holidays seem to have had an opposite effect, and we continue to see an uptick rather than a decline. I mean, my hope would be that we'd start to see a flattening of positive cases and certainly in deaths for a couple of weeks, so that we can start bringing kids back. Logically, I think elementary will probably be the first group to come back when we deem that that's appropriate. But, you know, I want everyone to be prepared that there's a very good possibility that we won't be back until after the holiday.
Okay, so I have a question. My kids are grown and I'm so thankful for that right now. But a lot of my friends with kids in school are talking about whether their children are falling behind. You know, I have friends who are trying to teach calculus. I have friends, dads who are trying to remember ratios. How do we do this again? I'm sure this has come up in conversation within the district. What are your thoughts about children who are not going to be where they should be? That's
a great question. Frankly, if there's anything I lose sleep over, it's that. You know, in particular, we have about 29% of our kids are what you would consider to be at risk because of financial or demographic challenges. I mean, last spring in March through the summer, we distributed 170,000 meals to students in need. This school year alone, we have distributed, as of today, around 75,000 meals. So, you know, I started this conversation with 3 factors. One is social emotional well-being. 2 is the instructional integrity of the content we're delivering, and 3 is the health and safety. So what we're seeing in the remote environment is that, frankly, from an instructional integrity perspective, students have more access to their teachers than they did in the hybrid. And so we're seeing benefits from an instructional perspective being in this remote environment. But where we're suffering is in the social emotional perspective. So the emails I'm getting from families are around, my child is really struggling sitting in front of a screen for 6 or 7 hours. And I get that because I have 3 kids of my own that are on screens all day attending school, and then school ends and they're still in their room for 3 hours. And I'm like, why are you still in your room? And because they have homework. So they're spending 10 hours a day in their bedrooms. So I get that is a real big challenge. My fingers crossed, hoping that this vaccine starts to hit the market soon, so that we can get kids back into face-to-face, because there's no replacement for school. There's no replacement for face-to-face instruction, because that's the only thing that covers the social, emotional, the instructional integrity, and the health and safety when it's safe to do so. But, you know, kind of a long way to answer your question. We are already thinking about what this summer and what next school year looks like, because we are going to have some remediation that needs to take place. And we're thinking strategically about how, if there's another stimulus package, how we can use some of those funds to create, a robust summer school program that can meet the needs of some of these kids that really, fell behind. And frankly, we're going to have to use those monies next year. And, consider either a 0 hour or an extra hour for some of that remediation.
So I might also add, I think that one of the things that, and I'm going to just take my hat off if I can, to a longtime chamber member and community activist who was involved with our school district, Gordon Muir, who we had a great relationship with. We did the chamber show with, and he's just going to be sorely missed, I know, by many people. But one of the things that Gordon did for us is he was always a champion of Huron Valley schools. When it came to a question about Huron Valley, he was the first to say, your kids can't get a better education than in Huron Valley. And I always appreciated that about him. And it's going to be incumbent upon all of us, I think, to assure people that who have made a different choice, whether it's homeschooling or another school district and they live in Huron Valley, or a private school, encouraging our students to come home because we feel like Huron Valley Schools is their home. And so I think that the chamber will be an integral part of that messaging as we look to, bring our kids and our families back into the fold, provide that remediation that Paul was talking about and Sally was referencing. That's going to be really important for all of us because, as Paul indicated, we rely on enrollment and, the per pupil funding to really drive our resources here in Huron Valley.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, great. And this will be for either of you actually, but going back to Paul's comment about the meals and the meal shortage. And I know we can't imagine, but in our own community that kids go hungry because they're not getting a meal, and it's just heart-wrenching to me. Do you have anything in place right now? And forgive me if there are, and I'm just not up to speed through the chamber, but that we're addressing this, or what can we do or I do as a local business community to support or initiate or to continue some of those efforts when it comes to feeding programs in a virtual environment?
So Kim, do you want to speak to community sharing? I'll start with, in terms of the school district, we are distributing meals every Wednesday at 8 different locations strategically placed throughout the district, and we distribute about 10,000 meals at a time. For any reason, a parent can come to that site. They don't have to show identification. They don't have to indicate the number of children they have. They just come up and say, I've got 3 kids. I need enough meals for 7 days, and they take 21 meals. So that's one vehicle through the school district. We are also planning to distribute meals over the holiday break on Mondays. And so more information will be forthcoming related to that as well. And then beyond that, Kim, if you could speak to community sharing and the tremendous work they're doing in the community.
Sure. And most of you are familiar with community sharing. They have a food and a clothing pantry. They're located north of M59 on Duck Lake Road, just before it turns to dirt. So at the end of the pavement, that's the Duck Lake Center, and community sharing is housed there. Their food pantry is well stocked. They have had challenges like a lot of organizations in 2020. They rely, as you know, on generating revenue through a couple of big events, whether it's empty bowls or their twice a year community garage sale. They haven't been able to do those things because of the pandemic, but they are still meeting the needs of the community. They touch every aspect of our community and those folks in need. And so we work closely with them. And, community sharing is a tremendous community resource. So anybody in need, can go there and have access to the food and the clothing pantry, as well as they connect folks with organizations that can help with utility bills. They can help with job searches. If they don't have all the answers there, they help track down the answers. They have caseworkers that work with individuals that that just show up and need an array of services.
So Kim, would you say then that, I mean, our church, I go to Cornerstone Church up on Hickory Ridge across from the Christmas tree farm. And I know we're a regular contributor to community sharing, and I've been happy to contribute as well. Would you say that that's the best way to support the school as far as the meals? Or is there a different avenue?
Yes, I would. And I would say what Paul mentioned is, you know, we are distributing meals, you know, every week at multiple locations. We know that a number of families rely on those meals, and that's made possible, frankly, through support at the federal level from the USDA. And so the Department of Agriculture has a lot to do with that meal distribution. But, you know, I mean, it doesn't touch everybody. So I would think that between community sharing and what we are able to do from that meal distribution, we're reaching a lot of folks. But that's not to say that, you know, there aren't folks falling through the cracks. So, but when we learn about them, we tend to connect them with community sharing. So if your church is routinely supporting community sharing, then I think that's the best way to channel our resources.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can I say something? We at the chamber are right now collecting gift cards, monetary donations, and chunky soups and kids cereals or any cereals, and basically any food, but those are the things that they're really needing. And we're giving that to community sharing. So keep that in mind if you're around the chamber and want to just drop something off, but probably monetary donations are what's needed the most, and gift cards for the season.
Yep, kids cereals as well. I'm trying to think what else, Jen. We had talked about winter coats.
Yes, boots,
yeah.
hats, no kids
Yep.
will be cold. That's what their motto is. And the other thing I wanted to pose this question back. I know it's kind of the same question, but I know the families, like we would get families from, let's say Lakeland High School, because that's where my kids went, that needed, and it was like a teacher would tell us. Are we able to get some of that information, and we could help as a chamber? And I know our chamber members would absolutely adopt families for a bigger need at this time.
We did that here on Valley State Bank. We reached out to the social workers at the schools and found out what families were in need to provide Thanksgiving meals, you know, for each school.
So I know Lindsay Cotter has her hand up, but I would just say this, Jen, I'll send out a message to our school social workers, gather that information, and then send that directly to you so that we can get those needs met, because we do know it's a little different in this remote environment, being able to have that access to that information routinely. So I'll send that message out to our social workers who do know those families, and we can channel that information directly to you.
Okay, that's great. And we will distribute to all of our members. And I know how our members are.
And Lindsay had her hand up.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
Is it okay if I jump in right now? So I just wanted to reach out a little bit and talk about what we're doing as far as food subsidy for our students. There's a program that's been running actually now for many years here in Huron Valley. It's been supported by our Huron Valley Optimists, and they've been working with our staff here in Huron Valley. It's a program called Blessings in a Backpack. And what the program does is provide weekend meals for identified students. And every Friday, a helper in the building helps provide these weekend meals to students, and they're put in their backpacks and they go home with the food available for them. This program has been in service now for actually a couple of years. We started in one building and now we're throughout the district. Unfortunately, in March, we were unable to have our annual fundraiser that funds this program because it actually costs us through donations, but it costs us $110 per child to provide 1 year of weekend food in the backpack. So we are putting together a campaign that'll be starting, we'll have it out by the first of the year. We're hoping that by the time our students are back in the classroom, that we'll have raised enough funds to continue to keep that program for our kids on the weekends. Currently, right now, I know through the end of December, our government has been helping out with the weekend supply also. But we want to be ready, the Huron Valley Optimists, and those people who are working with us in Huron Valley, we want to get a program, a fundraising program together so that we have the funds available to continue this program for the kids that really need it. So I just wanted to reach out to the members of the chamber. I know I have some board members listening here also, but it's an important program that has been subsidizing food for our students for many years already, and it needs to continue. So that's one other source kind of working behind the scenes, but you'll hear more about it. Thank you.
Brian?
Hi there. First of all, I have a question and a comment. And for my comment, I would like to echo what Melissa had said earlier. I also am a parent with kids in the school system, and you guys have just inherited an impossible situation. But you guys have been really good about communicating with people, responding to feedback in a timely manner, and giving out details that people are asking for. And like I said, I just want to kind of echo that sentiment that as another parent here today, that we really do appreciate everything that you guys are doing at HVS. My question is there, all right, so we're talking about like feeding needs, like meal needs. Is there a place where, or some kind of post that is asking for any kind of like supply needs for the schools? Like, for example, if I have an old printer that still works, but I'm going to upgrade mine, is there a place like in the school website or something that says so-and-so could really use a free printer if you want to donate it, or something like that? Or is that all done on a classroom level?
So Brian, we use community sharing really for that sort of distribution, just because, as a school district, we have certain parameters that we have to operate under in terms of how we purchase and how we disband of goods and materials. And it's tied to like life expectancy and some of those sorts of things. And that's really why we are encouraging community members who have reached out to the school district that want to donate like a printer or a coat or something along those lines. We've really struck that partnership with community sharing to assist with that. And then we send families to community sharing, and we will give them a heads up that families are coming to community sharing. So that's kind of how we're working that. The other thing I wanted to mention regarding food distribution is, as of right now, that's through June that we will continue to receive those monies, or I'm sorry, those meals from the USDA.
Okay, thank you much.
Yep. Any other questions? Questions, comments, feedback?
That was really my question to the group is, I appreciate the kind words. Brian, thank you, and others, thank you so much. We do have several board members on this Zoom meeting as well. Those folks, truly is a thankless job. Paul and I fortunately get paid to do what we do, and it doesn't make the hate mail any easier on some days, but at least we know we're getting paid. But the folks that serve on our board, you know, that is truly the most thankless job some days in the world. So I just want them, you know, to hear that message as well, that you're grateful for the decisions that we've made, because it's a really tough job, and we've had to do it, you know, sometimes making decisions at a moment's notice without all the information that we would like to have when making a decision, but being as nimble as possible and doing it always with the safety of our staff and students in mind. But having said that, you know, is there something that we could be doing better, differently, more of, less of, that kind of thing? We try not to live in the space of social media because that can be just not very enchanting at times. And so, you know, but so, you know, with a group like this tuned into the community, is there something that we could or should be doing better or differently than we're doing right now?
I mean, I can share an opinion based on my child's experience, if that's kind of what you're looking for. But we originally went with the hybrid module because she still wanted that social interaction, and I felt that that was very important for her. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that like she came out of this whole quarantine thing unscathed, because there was some serious anxiety issues. There was social anxiety issues. There was like throwing up when I'd get her to school on the days that she had in-person learning, because she would have such bad anxiety that she would actually get to the point she would be throwing up in the office. But we felt it was important to like, okay, this sucks, and this is life. Sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable and you have to push through it, and you need to do what you got to do. And I have to compliment Mirror. They were fantastic, and they did a great job of addressing what was going on with her and working with her. And Mrs. Ma was fantastic and came up with a great plan for her. I will say now, with having gone to the virtual, she feels like she's getting much more out of it. So I guess my comment would be, with the hybrid situation, them not having that face-to-face contact, not having Zoom meetings throughout the day. She didn't feel like she was connecting with her teacher. She didn't feel like she was like she couldn't ask a question if she had a question. You know, there wasn't like a lesson plan. It was, they throw, you know, you get work to do and you just complete that work on your own. So if possible, if it's at all possible, you know, if we do go back to going into a hybrid situation, you know, I know funding's a huge issue, but if there was some way to maybe, as the teacher was instructing group A, they had their camera on, you know, in a Zoom meeting, so that the kids, you know, group B, who's at home, could still be seeing their teacher. And if they have a question, they could ask that question, rather than having to send an email in, wait for a response, and then you're kind of held up on completing that assignment. So I don't know if that's something that's possible. I'm sure you guys have probably smacked your head against walls trying to find the best ways to make this work for everybody. But that's just an observation as a parent, that, you know, she, as much as she would rather be there in person, of course, like the virtual side of it is much better when she has to be up and on a Zoom call, because again, I'm a working mom and trying to get her out of bed is not the easiest thing all the time. And when she doesn't have to be on a class at a certain time, then, well, why do I have to get up? It doesn't matter when I get up. You know, I can do my work whenever. You know, I don't, like, there's no accountability on school side. It's just me yelling at her to get up so that she keeps some kind of a schedule, you know.
So Melissa, I completely agree. As the mom of, I mean, thank God my son graduated in June because he's so unmotivated. We would never have gotten through senior year.
Yeah.
But I've got a junior now at Milford, and my husband teaches at Lakeland. And so it's been quite the year to figure out. And I do feel like Huron Valley Schools has done a great job. Central office has done a great job with trying to figure things out. But it's been very stressful. It's been, luckily my daughter is very motivated. She's in multiple AP classes and has U of M on her mind. Oh my gosh. So, but thank goodness I'm in a good place. And you know, my husband teaches high school, so he can help her where she needs the help. But I really feel for those families like you, and like I know Brian's got young kids. I'm trying to think who else I see. I know Christian has young kids. I definitely feel for all of you, but I know Huron Valley Schools is doing, I think, as much as they can. I hope as much as they can to help everybody out. So just know that I think of all of you every day.
Just a quick response to the live stream question. It's a great question. I want to assure you that we have racked our brains to try to figure out a way to make live stream work. We've brought work groups together. We've really worked through the key questions associated with how we would make that work. It's incredibly challenging if you've got 15 kids in front of you and 15 kids online. Just to manage the classroom management components of that alone is complex. And then there's FERPA concerns. Can't have students in class on camera, and then there's recording concerns. And so there are just a variety of issues associated with the live stream. One of the things that we've been kicking around most recently, should we have to go back into some sort of a hybrid, is really requiring recording lessons and pushing it out. So even if a student isn't watching something live, they're still watching the instruction, even if it's after the fact. So maybe, first hour starts at 8 o'clock, but you're watching first hour, at the end of the day, or you're watching it second hour, you're shifting your whole day. So we're exploring some of those options. It's incredibly complicated. Our teachers have done an absolute amazing job teaching hybrid, teaching online, teaching asynchronous, teaching synchronous. I applaud all the efforts that they've put forth to make this year as successful as possible. And I will be honest, my bias is not to go back hybrid. I think hybrid was, despite everyone's best efforts, you can't be in two places at one time. So it's just extraordinarily challenging to make that work. So I'm hoping we can bring back students 4 days a week at some point, in January or into second semester, because that's really what's best for an instructional perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think either virtual or hybrid or in person is, but the hybrid is just, it's really easy to fall behind and to kind of not know what's going on and not feel like you can, get those questions answered right away.
Well, and I would like, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
I just want to also comment on that too. So my two kids, Romy's in middle school, Enzo's in elementary, and Romy's a very much independent studier, and she was okay with the hybrid. She was fine. But my son, the one thing that we had noticed is that with the hybrid situation is exactly what Melissa was saying earlier, is that he wasn't receiving any new content on those days that he was at home. And so that, so the hybrid was a struggle for us with one, but not the other. And of course you're getting these emails too, right? So, I mean, but my feedback would be, if you have to go back hybrid, please have a consistent alternative for the kids at home. Because we heard that some teachers were killing it on those hybrid days. They pre-recorded videos, they were awesome, they were amazing. And then another class was lackluster, okay? Be diplomatic, okay? It was underperforming. And so I guess that if that is going back to a hybrid program, that having more consistency in requirements of teachers and what they should do for those kids who are not in the classroom on those days, that standard needs to be raised. I mean, and like I said, I don't mean to be critical, but that is my honest feedback as a parent. And I understand, and you know, this is a business forum, and all of us businesses have had our businesses turned upside down. And I understand we're all clamoring to figure out how we're going to, you know, react and adapt to what's happening. But my feedback as a parent is, if it goes, to me, I would prefer one or the other, because the hybrid kind of failed my son. So
Yeah. We appreciate that feedback from both of you, and we're incredibly grateful. I'll tell you, if you don't share the feedback, we don't get better. So, you know, please don't ever feel like you can't be totally transparent with us. This isn't something we haven't heard before, and I will share. That's why the Wednesdays really being held harmless as those asynchronous days have been so important, because we have been taking that feedback and developing professional learning for our staff, because, you know, we're asking them to do something that they've never done before, and the educational environment has never existed in this context. And so we're trying to help them understand how they can be successful in doing this. And so we've developed a ton of online professional learning videos to help them engage. Teachers teaching teachers how to do this successfully. They're learning from one another, job embedded professional learning. So I do feel like we've made tremendous strides, but we always have room for growth. So I really appreciate the feedback.
I still love you, man.
I do too.
I have a question, Paul.
Yeah, Randy.
So in our work in substance use misuse prevention, we talk about adverse childhood experiences like they do in the education world a lot, you know, and how ACEs can affect kids. And so this stuff we're talking about here is, you know, relevant right now. And I was just kind of curious, going down the road now that we hopefully are seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Coming out of this, what's the education world got to say about helping kids? Because, you know, the globe just got one big old ACE, and then some others besides. But, you know, it's just a really tough time, as these folks are all expressing. I hope that the coalition will be a part of whatever effort the school district does, as we've been partnering with you right along. But I'm just wondering, kind of in general, what the education world, if they've had a moment to even think about what happens after we get back to what, you know, some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we of course appreciate the partnership with the coalition. We're fortunate to have you guys over there at Milford High School, and I'm open to sitting down and having that conversation in a little more detail. But we're fortunate that we have, you know, social workers throughout our school district. We're fortunate that we're able to utilize grant monies to really target where we're identifying some of those ACEs that exist. Frankly, we don't know the full impact of what this last almost year has dealt us. It's interesting to hear you say it's like the world has experienced one big ACE. I would agree with that. I think it's up to us to diagnose when we get back and develop intervening strategies to help kids overcome. Kim, anything you want to add to that?
I agree that I'm not sure we have a full knowledge of the impact at this point. And much like we don't necessarily know what we need to remediate from an educational standpoint or an academic standpoint, we don't know what we need to remediate from a social emotional standpoint. You know, I think that, you know, Paul, you talked about what keeps you up at night. these are the things that keep me up at night, is not fully knowing the impact that this has had on our families at this point, because it, to some degree, it's hidden from us. And I think that we're going to learn that over the next several years. I think it could take a long time to fully know that impact, and then to devise those strategies to help those kids, those families recover from the adverse childhood experiences. So that's my thinking. But I think it's a really good question. And it's one of the things that will be thought about long after I've retired from Huron Valley Schools.
You're not retiring.
So you and Randy can fight about, you and Randy.
Hold on a minute. I was just hoping my question would be stupid enough that she wouldn't, she'd want me to get out of town, but I guess apparently it wasn't that bad a question.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul and Kim. We're so happy that you did this. I mean, obviously it's a big topic. That this is our most successful one to date, our seminar series. So, and I'm thankful that you're there. I'm glad my children are graduated. It would have been, we would have been really close. Thank you all for attending. If you have any further questions, you can email me and I can pass that on to Kim and Dr. Paul. So thank you so much, everyone.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, HVS.
Take
Thanks,
care.
guys.